So most R&D explanations are either too vague or too full of jargon to really understand what's going on. And I am guilty of this myself, I'm not going to lie. We have helped engineering-driven startups claim over $2 million of credits using this exact framework. In this video, I'm walking through the IRS framework in real startup language. What does the 4-part test mean? What is the software classification? And the audit-ready documentation. And by the end, you'll know exactly how to evaluate your own eligibility. How do you evaluate your research and development projects through the lens of the IRS's 4-part test? Now, let's walk through a specific example of how this might work, because there are nuances that we want to make sure we're taking into account when we're doing this analysis. So the first part is that the biggest mistake I see is that founders and engineering teams, they apply it to their whole product or their whole platform. So think of it this way. You wouldn't say that a whole car is research and development. There are certain elements of it that you have already figured out. Maybe that's the frame, the tire, the wheels. There's certain areas that are sort of already been figured out. But maybe there's one specific area of focus that you're working on that has a lot of R&D. Maybe that's the engine of the car. So if you apply this framework to, say, a platform, you want to look at it holistically and then drill down to the specific components where the R&D really exists. So you might think, why are we doing this? Well, the IRS wants to make sure that you're not claiming all of the expenses related to the whole thing. They want to break it down into specific, what they call business components. Now, these business components are just projects or specific features or functionalities. What is the core area of R&D that the team is really working on? So you could have a whole platform, but maybe your team is focused on a specific function for the credit year. Now, we really want to narrow it down and look through the lens of the 4-part test and apply that to this specific area. So what were the technical challenges related to this specific area? Why were you building this function in the first place? Was there something else that was there prior that didn't work? Maybe there was scalability issues. Maybe there were performance issues. Maybe you wanted real-time rendering. For whatever reason, you want to make sure that you're logging why you started this project. Then you want to understand what were the technical challenges and then what was your approach to overcome those challenges as well. So to recap, you want to make sure you're not looking at the whole platform or the whole component as R&D, but really narrow it down to the specific area of focus. That's what the IRS wants to see. They want to see what was your narrow focus of R&D and if that focus really can qualify for the R&D tax credit. So we helped a SaaS company isolate their specific systems and then utilize that framework to capture a meaningful credit. If you want to see how this specifically applies to your situation, make sure you grab your R&D tax credit snapshot in the link below. Once you do that, I will walk through your specific situation through a video, or if you want to just jump on a quick call with me, that option is there as well. But let's keep going. So now that we talked a little bit about what components could qualify, this is one area that I want to take a little bit more time on because it can be confusing to most folks. So say, for example, you have one platform and it's all one code base. Now you have a specific component that is external facing. So this is really the application that you're building and the end users are folks outside of your company that are going to be using the application to solve their problem or their situation. Now, say in that same platform, you have an internal facing tool. Now, this internal facing tool, the end users are going to be individuals inside your company. Now, the IRS has very specific rules for this component, the internal component, as well as the external component. So the external component, that's going to go through the normal 4-part test, right? So why were you doing it? What was the technical challenges? And what was the process of experimentation? Pretty straightforward. But now we take a look at this internal component. This internal component has a different classification. This is what the IRS calls IUS, or internal use software. And what that means is that this is really not built for sale, lease, or license for external users. You built this for your own use, and the primary users of this are going to be your internal company. So what the government wants to see here is, well, why did you build it in the first place? Why couldn't you just buy something off the shelf that's available in the market and utilize that? Was this what you built really R&D? And what you need to do is that this needs to go through an additional 3-part test. I know we have a 4-part test and now we have a 3-part test. So yes, this is a 7-part test for this internal component. And what that's really asking is that, was it really innovative? Was there innovation done on this component? The second one is going to be, was there economic risk? Did you actually invest a lot of money, and was that money at risk while you built it? And finally, why couldn't you just buy this solution from the market? So say there's an HR system or a payroll processing system like ServiceNow or Workday. They're going to go, well, why couldn't you just purchase that instead? Why specifically did you feel the need that you had to develop your own system, and what were the capabilities in this that made it so specific to you and that made it R&D? Now, this is crucial because it needs to pass all 7 parts in order to qualify. This is a higher threshold that it needs to meet in order to qualify for the R&D tax credit. So to summarize, when you have external facing users, those are going to go through the regular 4-part test. Now, if you build something internally for your own use, that will need to go through the more rigorous 7-part test, and you're going to need to provide additional evidence to show that there really was innovative work that was being done. So the next time you come across a component that you're developing, make sure to ask yourselves the question, who is the external users? Who are the end users of this? And if it's internal, make sure that you have the documentation around innovation and the economic risk. So at this point, you really might be wondering, this is a lot of work to document all of this type of work that's being done. Does the IRS really need all of this information in order to claim the credit? And the answer is, well, yes. They require to have contemporaneous documentation in order to file and then claim the credit. Now, I really want to touch on one subject that's very crucial to the IRS and something that they're really enforcing, and that's the concept of contemporaneous documentation. So, say for example, you're a company and you used estimates to claim the credit and you really didn't document the work that was being done. Now, if that were to come under audit, the first thing the government is going to ask for those reports and ultimately contemporaneous documentation to support the credits and the activities that were being claimed. Now, if you don't have that, that's going to be a crucial gap in your whole credit study. The whole credit could come crumbling down because you don't have that contemporaneous documentation. So let's talk about what contemporaneous documentation actually is. Well, this just means artifacts, evidence that are being created during the time of development. So as you're doing the actual work, where are the artifacts? Where are the different evidences of the development, those technical challenges, those processes of experimentation? Where are those stored, and how are those documents being connected to the activities and ultimately the credit that's being claimed? We've spoken a little bit in previous videos of how the 6765 is going to evolve. And this is really where the IRS is going. They are going to be asking these questions on the form going forward. So it's really important to start having a system and predictable process in place to capture these types of documents in order to have those ready for the credit claim. Now, you might be wondering how to do this realistically without putting too much pressure on the engineering team. Well, actually, the answer to that is you're already doing it. So most companies already have repositories where they're documenting all the different activities already, whether that's Jira, Confluence, or GitHub. These are the types of repositories that already have all the artifacts that you would need. Now, what you want to do is you want to periodically keep a lot of those different artifacts and then ensure that those are part of your contemporaneous documentation support package when the credit gets filed. One additional area that I recommend is just having quarterly check-ins. So whether that's with your engineering, finance, or CPA, have quarterly check-ins to talk about what were the developments that were happening during this quarter. This is a great way to not only gather the documentation, but have real up-to-date information on what are the types of activities that are being performed. This is a great way to get up-to-date information on how the development process is going. And again, this is just great best practices going forward so that when you're putting the documentation together for the filing at the end of the year, everything is already compiled and you have it already at your fingertips. You don't need to go back in time trying to find all these different artifacts and build that up from scratch. A lot of engineering teams invest heavily in technical talent without having the expertise of understanding if the work that's being performed qualifies for the R&D tax credit. That is rarely a gap in the team's knowledge because this framework has multiple layers. Most generalist CPAs don't understand the nuances that come with this specific area. Without a precise evaluation, a lot of companies miss out on the credit entirely, or they overclaim, and that produces risk. We work with engineering-driven teams every day to evaluate eligibility, classify what qualifies, and ultimately put that audit-ready R&D study in place. We have helped clients identify over $2 million of credits using this exact framework. If you want to see how this framework applies to you specifically, click in the link below for your own personalized R&D credit snapshot. I will record a personalized video based on the details that you provide about you and your company. And if you already know you want a specialist to look at your work directly, you can book a call directly in the same link as well. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.